So today on the Fireside podcast, we're joined by Scott DeCuna, who's a seasoned marketing executive with over 20 years of experience in delivering ambitious visions and executing plans across multiple industries. Now, Scott is a past chair and board of director member at Tree Canada, which is Canada's only national non-for-profit organization dedicated to planting, nurturing trees in both rural and urban environments. So today we're going to be talking about all the amazing things that the organization is tackling and how their organization is on a mission to plant and nurture trees across Canada to improve lives and fight climate change. Thanks for joining, Scott.
Thank you, Sean. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This is a really cool opportunity and I love the work that you're doing and I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about that today. So I know our podcast is primarily focused around Muskoka, which when I saw Tree Canada and there's some work that you guys did recently, I saw it on LinkedIn. Muskoka is really just, it's a sea of green and it's, the lush landscape is thanks to the trees, which got me thinking, I'm like, you know what? This would be a really cool topic to talk about. And I think trees are sometimes things that we take for granted or overlook. And by kind of looking at it a little bit closer, you can see that it's, direct contributions from organizations like yourselves, which allow this thing that we're so used to, look at your window, you see a tree, to flourish and really thrive within Canada. So I'm not sure, do you have any connection to Muskoka or do you like to visit or anything like that?
I love to visit Muskoka.
Yeah.
I love to visit. And I played golf around Muskoka and Rocky
Oh,
Crest,
perfect.
Lake Joe, and it's just
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I do think Muskoka is one of those areas within the country, as I say, in the province from the country,
Hmm.
that sort of really projects what people assume is Canada. Like it's green and it's forested and it's lakes and it's
Yes.
gorgeous and it's cottaging. It's all these wonderful cottaging and fishing, all these wonderful things that we associate with summertime in Canada. And I think you are absolutely right, Sean. Completely spoilt with the green landscape that you enjoy in Muskoka. And all the benefits the trees bring. So I've been on the board at Tree Canada for about since 2018, and much of the work that we've done in the past has originally started off, I think, the early 90s, I think 92, with the Mulroney government, and that was really around getting trees planted, as the importance of planting trees, and much of the work that was originally done was around the large plantation type plantings that you see out in wilderness type areas. The organization's evolved a little bit from there. And so some of the things you just talked about, very much around urban planting, people living close to nature has become more of a focus of the organization. We still do all those other wonderful things, and we've got a leadership team and a great CEO that have advanced the cause significantly. The organization is significantly larger than it was just a decade ago. I think it's like probably 10 times the size that it was a decade ago.
Wow.
And so the number of plantings that we do across the organization, the number of communities we serve and organizations we partner with is enormous. And yeah, so I think we're trying to give a little bit of that Muskoka type experience to everyone in Canada and say, can you be close to trees eventually?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the goal.
That's it. And you know what? I think it's the perfect landscape when exactly like people are thinking about Canada, home and abroad, like lush green forests and Canadian Shield and things like that. Those are images that kind of conjure up, which is really cool, for you and your organization to be a part of that vision because, when people think of Canada, they think of trees and you're directly tied to that, which is really cool. When it comes down to, I guess, summer for you, I know that you're a bit of a tennis player.
A bad tennis player,
I
but
did. I
yeah,
did some
an
research.
old tennis player.
So, do you have any favorite summer activities when you get out there? It sounds like you play golf as well. Just to kind of, I guess, have a little insight on how you like to
Oh,
spend your summers.
well, I'm a worse golfer than I'm a tennis player, but I'll share that up front.
That's okay.
But I love to hike. I think so. That's something I
Nice.
probably over the last 20 years I've got more involved in, and so I love to hike. And I think this time of year is perfect for me because
Hmm.
as winter ends, those hiking trails become more accessible when you go through
Yeah.
hiking. And where we live in Ontario is really we are quite blessed. There's hiking trails everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've met folks over the last year that have hiked the Bruce Trail,
Wow.
and obviously that's something that most of us can't do like day in day out. But you can carve up chunks and sections and say how do you do the whole trail over the course of a few years.
Hmm.
And I think in general, hiking is something that allows you to see nature and be a part of nature. And as anybody, as long as you can walk and you can climb steps and you can do things, then hiking is something that's accessible to you. That's something I'm looking forward to now the seasons are changing and I get those access back to those trails.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like Ontario Parks does a great job of outlining the different trails. And similarly to yourself, I have friends that got into hiking years ago and now they've done these really large, ambitious trips. But usually it starts with, a simple trail hike and just
Yeah.
getting out there, familiarizing yourself with the different things required. And by doing that, it becomes a lot less intimidating. I know that, even just camping in Algonquin Park, for a lot of people, that sounds like not stressful, but an endeavor where you'd have to have a lot of planning. But with the right gear and the right friend or the right group, everything becomes a lot more obtainable. Especially like you said, where we are, just in Southern Ontario, Northern Ontario, we're just absolutely fortunate to have everything around us that we do, and everything's just a Google search away.
It's so true. It's so
Yeah,
true. And I think as you start to look across the country and you sort of see some of the things that we have access to as Canadians, it's quite an exciting place to be as the world embraces a more outward looking, nature focused perspective. So
exactly. Yeah.
something to get on board with.
For sure. So as we talk about Tree Canada, now I obviously know about your organization, did a lot of research, but if somebody wasn't familiar with the organization, what would be the, I guess, summary that you'd provide to them to kind of let them
Oh
know
my
what
gosh.
you and your team do? Yeah.
So, so I sit on the board. So the board obviously provides the governance and the oversight of Tree Canada. And I served for 3 years as the chair. So I still sit on the board as the past chair. So I'm not actively involved in the daily operations of the organization, but the CEO and the leadership team, the executive team that handles that, is very much focused around really planting and nurturing trees and educating folks around the importance of planting and nurturing trees right across the country. And that means there's a number of partnerships that we've been involved in right across the board, whether it's with the federal government, some of the provincial governments, municipalities, First Nations, and really around encouraging the planting of trees. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, the early focus of the organization was very much around some of the large plantation plantings, whereas today, much of the focus is also around urban planting. And how do you bring trees into the environments where people live and work?
Mhm.
And as a result, Canada has been heavily involved in sort of being at the forefront of helping shape how people think about trees and planting of trees in many of those communities. Organizationally, we are over 30, well, I'm trying to think, 1992, so 34 years old as an organization. We have a team of almost 50 people within under the Tree Canada umbrella, plus partnerships with a number of organizations. The number of communities we serve, I think the goal is something like 180 different communities that we try to serve in the course of the year, this year. And really to think that we're a national organization because we plant in every single province. And so that makes us a little bit more unique. There's
Mhm.
relationships in every single province. And we'll partner with corporation, with lots of private funding, donations and grants and the like that
Yep.
have been provided to Tree Canada to help facilitate the work that we do. As a result of climate change, we're also now planting in some of the other territories. So we're planting up in the Northwest Territories too, which is a different type of experience for us as an organization. But that's as a result of the ability to now plant more trees and bring different things to different communities.
That's fantastic. And when it comes down to Canadian lumber, I know, just talking about that as a former carpenter, SPF, like spruce pine fir, is one of those building materials that we will probably just continue to need and will be something where it's a renewable resource that we can really lean on. And I was reading something once, I forget this, I remember the graphic, but just talking about the areas of the country in Canada where building material like strong lumber for home building comes from. And really that climate, I believe thinking back to the study now, but how the climate shapes the density of the wood and the efficiency of it and all that kind of stuff. So no, it's really neat to see
Yeah.
how you're helping that. That's great. And over the 30 plus years of being with Tree Canada or Tree Canada being an organization, I guess you've seen that shift of it going from day one to the mission and the statement that you have today. How do you kind of see this unfolding?
So I think I'll just call it an important thing. So we're not actively involved with organizations that are in the lumber industry, and that's not
Got
because
it.
we
Okay.
don't believe
Sorry.
in the lumber industry,
Yes.
but
Yep.
we do plant on various land types and land ownerships right
Got
across the
it.
board, but we're not actually involved in that space.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that
Yep.
industry. It creates thousands and thousands of jobs. It's really
Yep.
good,
Yep.
but it's
Yep.
not relationships we have. I will say that the evolution of the organization has been very different. I think there was the importance in the early 90s around recognizing the importance of trees and what that means for Canadians in general and creating landscaped areas. But the nature of the organization has evolved. So when I think of when I first joined as a board member in 2018, so my involvement in Tree Canada started when I was actually in corporate sector in 2008 and helped build a relationship, a corporate partnership that Tree Canada had with an organization I used to work for. And at the time we were very focused on planting gazillions of trees everywhere, right? So this is the evolution of the organization is like, how can you Tree Canada saying we want to bring trees closer to where people live and work,
Hmm.
because that makes the difference, and it's a difference across a whole range of different areas. So whether it is around mental health, as an example, we know that there's enough evidence around planting. When you walk in wooded areas, your blood pressure drops, you start to feel better, you feel less stress, and all those kinds of things comes to the fore when you're building up and you're doing your civic planning. There's the benefits around reducing heat spots in specific areas, the ability to, if trees are planted appropriately, that could reduce some of the risk of flooding in certain areas.
Mm,
If you plant trees, you can also address some food security questions that some communities might have. There's a number of reasons that you sort of plant trees close to people and you can bring all kinds of benefit. And that's been a focus. I think as we start to look outwards a little bit more, there is more interest that's been seen right across the board in biodiversity.
mm,
And so it's planting the right types of trees in the right types of places so you can formulate the biodiversity that we're looking for to in terms of creating environments that can actually support uh, the larger flora and fauna that are native to Canada in many
yeah,
ways.
yeah, no, and I know that in 2024 alone, you reached 132 communities, in urban environments being one of those communities. Now, I guess when you look at different areas across Canada, are there any communities or cities that are doing urban forestry really well, and kind of like what can other communities learn from them that could
Oh my God.
take
I'm a bit
inspiration?
biased. I live in Oakville, Ontario, and Oakville, Ontario is probably considered a benchmark right across the board in terms of the planting of trees and formulation of parks and trails and the likes and these types of things. So I think within Oakville, within a kilometer's walk, anybody that lives in Oakville should be able to get onto a trail.
Hmm.
So all the communities developed in that sense, and I think the way this active management of the urban canopy is considered appropriate. The ability to have meaningful targets around managing the tree stock, managing the environment, managing pests that could be in the environment. Like there's a number of things that the town does really, really, really well that could be emulated in other parts of the country. Now, saying that, Sean, every part of the country is different. Climatic conditions are different in every part of the country. Certain species don't grow everywhere across Canada. So it's that selection of different things that makes sense for a community. And this is why I think this is where the value of an organization like Tree Canada coming to the fore, because there's enough institutional knowledge and expertise to help communities really understand these are the kinds of trees that you want to plant in these communities, do these kinds of things, because it isn't one size fits all, and it's certainly not a simple thing of just saying, "Oh, go, we'll throw some trees out to this area, and here we go." There's some great work that's been done by other communities, by other organizations too, that are seen as being that other organizations, communities can learn from, which
Hmm.
is around how do you nurture the trees so there's greater likelihood of success. So when you think about planting next to a highway or planting in a heavily urbanized area, what do you need to do to make those trees successful? And this Tree Canada does a lot of work around that space. There are other partner organizations that do a lot of work around that space. But that's half of it. Getting the trees in the ground is the first half. Nurturing them, getting them ready for success is the second.
For sure, in just like any sort of consultative approach, like having the right experts on your team is crucial. And I'm guessing there's a lot of communities that don't have someone who's on their team that's a tree expert, and being able to call on your team to understand um, how to better place trees and the best trees for certain environments. That has to be a It's a great resource for communities to have for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of work when Tree Canada works with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities around that and provision of that kind of expertise and being able to sort of provide experts in specific geographies that could speak to some of those things and say, how do you make sure that you actually are tapping into the broader base of knowledge and expertise so you can be successful in your tree planting efforts. So it's all good stuff, and the fact the organization has grown so much over the last decade probably speaks to the fact that people are becoming more attuned to the importance of planting trees, and they're looking for more success in how they do that.
Yeah, like diversity within an ecosystem is super important, and having diverse expertise is another thing that really benefits everyone. And I know that you did work up in the Northwest Territories, partnering with the Cleatshaw government on the boreal forest restoration. Now, I was doing some reading on that, and I was just kind of wondering, like, that's a community all coming together from different areas of the country. But what did that collaboration kind of look like on the ground?
Oh my gosh. In all fairness, I've never been out to the Northwest Territories, high on my list of places to get to, but I do know that our CEO and executive team were very, very heavily involved. It's a key project. It's quite an ambitious project, really, in terms of the amount of plantings they were trying to undertake. And I think the goal now is to get to, I think, 13 million trees by 2030. So it was certainly on our way to try and get there. But it's a fantastic project, and it's been very well received, and it's been working very closely with First Nations in those areas.
Hmm.
And that's the success. It's that partnership component. So bringing in corporate donors, bringing in expertise as required, and partnering with local communities to be able to sort of say, how do we make this as successful as human, given the challenges that the world is facing in general? Is this something that we can address in a way that guarantees, not guarantees, but provides a fair chance of success? So it is complex. You're planting out an environment where it's harder to ship things to.
Hmm.
You've got really to decide the type of trees that are more likely to thrive in an area, which ones make sense to grow in a specific area, how are we being authentic to the environment that those trees are being planted in, and how do we make one of the most important pieces is making sure there is local agreement and buy-in
Hmm.
before that work can be started and then completed, and that ongoing relationship to make sure that the work that's being done is really done hand in glove. So everybody's on the same side and marching in the same direction. Certainly, as a board member, we're thrilled with the work that's been done in the Northwest Territories, and we're thrilled with the relationships that are being built. And we look at it as is this a way that are there other communities that could also benefit from these types of projects? And certainly at Tree Canada, much of the work that's being completed is saying, how can we emulate this in other parts of the country if there's an interest?
No, that's great. Yeah, there just so much collaboration from so many different areas. And like you said, just coming down to the tree selection and really helping bring in trees or to help nurture trees that are there that benefit the ecosystem, the environment, while remaining authentic to the region. That's no, that's a really. I'm sure there was. It's looking back on it and going through it. There's so many different things, like you said, you can bring to different parts of the country potentially, and yeah, helping fostering that community relationship around the project is really cool to hear about. And I guess kind of segueing to urban environments. Now, are urban trees, I guess, is it harder to protect them than people would
Oh my
assume?
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about planting out in a forest, and you think about, many summer students, they go out to parts of the country in BC and Alberta, and they go plant trees, and helicopter flies them out, and they plant X number of hundreds of trees every day, and they're all tiny. They're all tiny
Hmm.
little saplings that go in, and Tree Canada does a lot of work to make sure that many of the trees that are planted survive beyond the first year and the third year and the fifth year, and all these sort of safeguards are in place. If you think about planting in an urban environment, let's say a new development, like a new housing development. So many
Hmm.
of the challenges the feedback you often get in new housing development is, oh, it's not green. It's concrete everywhere. There's no grass. There's no trees in the backyard. And so those things happen over time, over 20 years and 30 years, and they become very, very treed and very green it becomes the kind of communities and neighborhoods that people want to live in. Planting those kinds of trees, Sean, they're more expensive to start with. So you think about a small little sapling,
Hmm.
and maybe that's $4 as an example
Yep.
from the you plant out. If you're looking at planting a suitable tree in an urban environment, then you could be looking at over $1,000. And so you're throwing, and here, let's compare the differences between the two. So you think forested area, access to water, access to nutrients. Um, there's all kinds of sunshine. There's all kinds of wonderful things you get out there in the natural world. If you think about planting in an urban environment that could be heavily concreted, and so there's a lot more dust as people building buildings or maintaining roads or building roads, whatever that case would be, you run the risk of there not being enough water in that environment to support the trees that are being planted. You run the risk that because these trees are still relatively small, that they could easily be mowed down, run over by heavy machinery, or lost in the mix. And so you have to take a lot of steps to make sure that the trees you're planting are the right kinds of trees, and there's enough protections around them to make sure that you don't harm those trees as they're starting to take root and grow. And I think that's the big difference between the two that people don't always realize. Like you can plant a ton of trees when you're building a new subdivision, but how do you maintain those trees so they can actually start to grow and live, really flourish in those
Yeah.
communities? And those are the questions that need to be addressed
Oh, for sure.
as people are sort of planting accordingly.
Now, when it comes down to the seasonality of planting trees, as we get into spring, is there a time that you usually see more planting activity happening? And is it tied to any like particular month cycle or year cycle?
Yeah, there are times of the year you don't want to plant trees. Like as you probably can imagine, like November and
Hmm.
December, you
Yeah.
don't want to really plant. You don't want to plant trees.
No.
And there are other times of the year that we have to where you can plant trees, but you need to be more mindful. And there are other times of the year when you can plant trees and Mother Nature sort of or the environment you're in, or the climate you're in, or the part of the country you're in, like it aids that. When you think about certain parts of the country where you have spring is that little bit earlier, so you think of British Columbia as an example, where you embark on spring a little bit earlier. Those tree plantings can start that a little bit earlier. The same thing is true where the fall is that little bit later. Then you might be able to end your plantings towards that time. So we actually run Tree Canada Institute today. It's actually been passed by in the House of Commons as we've got National Tree Day and National Tree Week. So the week of the fourth week of September, we run National Tree Week activities where we plant trees, which is a great time of year to plant trees. So you're planting trees with the right expertise, and it's something that's probably common pretty much right across the country. You can still plant trees in in the last week, and more and more partners are looking at planting trees too. So I call out some of our partners. Bank of Montreal was a key partner that looked at planting gazillions of trees right across the country. And if we look at many of the other partners that we deal with, we're coming and supporting that to try and get more and more trees planted, because it is a great time of year and communities can come out and you can plant in parks, and you can plant in forested areas, you can plant anywhere you like to plant. This really, National Tree Day is really focused on those more of the urban plantings, but you can plant anywhere and anywhere. And that's a great time of year to plant trees. And I think if folks are interested, just there's enough information Tree Canada can provide around getting involved in local planting activities around National Tree Day, and the volunteering and the sites right across the country that people can be involved in, or even in their local communities, of just planting trees, and the fact that this is a great time to be involved in planting more trees for Canada in general.
That's so cool. No, that my follow-up question was going to be, how do I get involved? Because that's something that sounds right up my alley. And I know the Muskoka community would be into that as well. And it just sounds like a fun way to spend an afternoon, is going out there, helping contribute to the ecosystem, the environment, and getting some sunshine in the process. That's fantastic. Yeah, no, that's sunshine's great for everything. So no, that's awesome. That's really cool. I guess it kind of depends. Like, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but depending on where you are in the country, I guess those communities, like when you're planting the trees, part of the tree day, it would probably be maybe a different tree, or depending on what is in that ecosystem to start with.
Every part of the country is different, and I think
Yep.
the best thing to do would be to work with local experts to
Yep.
try and determine what's the sort of tree that it makes sense to plant. I think there are some great native trees in certain communities that folks would ideally want to focus on, rather than planting, their favorite maple tree. Maple trees. I love
Yeah.
maple trees, but like it's how do you get a maple tree that is synonymous with your area and your community, as opposed to getting a generic, like a generic maple leaf that maybe has come from some other part of the country that may not flourish as well in
Yeah.
that area.
No, I remember when I was younger, my grandparents, they gifted us two trees, one for me and one for my sister. And my sister got a bubblegum maple.
Oh well.
And yeah, I know it's still in my parents' backyard. Mine wasn't as successful, but it's still growing now. And but I think that was something when I was younger. It was just realizing I was like, 11 years old, but oh my God, how many different types of maple trees are there? Because you're only familiar really with the generic maple tree. And if you go to, it's just down the street from me, and I think yourself probably too, but there's a nursery. It's on the South Down. I'm blanking on the name here, but it's right near Oakville, and they've got a wide different variety of different trees for backyards and stuff like that. So I like to go there every so often and just browse through Sheridan Nurseries. That's the name of it.
Sure. Okay.
And just browse and learn about different things. But yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, there has to be quite the balancing act between what the community's looking for, and then the expertise and all the back end stuff that says you're looking for X. Well, here's a variation of that would work for the biodiversity and the different things within the ecosystem. That's really cool. Nice.
It's a really big one. So in terms of if you plant the right tree in the right place, like I remember a former president of Tree Canada used to share that if you plant the tree in the right place, it can provide shade in the summer.
Hmm.
It can provide a way to mitigate the wind in the winter. It can add more value to your property. There's a number of things that people don't think about when they're homeowners in terms of the value of planting trees. To your point, Sean, it's about planting the right tree in the right place, and that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, I know. And right tree, right place sounds like a simple thing, but there's a lot that goes into that selection. I'm sure. It's like everything sounds too simple. Well, it's probably because it sounds too simple. Oh, that's fantastic. And I guess when you kind of look at, your average Canadian and their understanding of forests and trees, what's something that you wish more people would know about forests?
Think something that people might guess at but don't really know. And the
Hmm.
Japanese do a very good study around this, was the value of tree bathing and the importance of getting out in nature. Because when you get out in nature, there are those benefits, those health benefits that we don't often think about. And so this is the part that I would recommend or suggest to any Canadian, to say we're blessed with a beautiful country that has so many areas that you can be close to nature in, whether that is in your local trail or a local park or a local forest or a national park of some shape or form, and to get out there and enjoy it as much as you can, because there are health benefits that will permeate to other parts of your life. So this you sort of build this in as being part of your routine.
Yeah. No, I was fortunate. I went to Nipissing University, which is in the North Bay. And behind Nipissing, they have this beautiful trail system that they use for cross country skiing for some of the year, but it connects with Duchesne Falls, which is just a nice little waterfall system if you're ever in North Bay. And yeah, it was just so nice to be able to go for a walk in between classes and get into nature and smell the fresh air. And the things that you're talking about in terms of stress relieving and that kind of stuff, it sounds too good to be true, but it's true. You get out
It's
there
true.
and you immediately feel it. No, it's just the smell of moss and stuff like that. So no, it's really neat to understand the health benefits. And for average person, especially someone who's located in a spot that's dense with trails, just get out there and start exploring. The weather's starting to get nice, and it's a great time to get out there and enjoy it.
There's no reason to hang out at home if you can get out and
No,
enjoy the trails. Right. That's
exactly.
the reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that you were talking before about the week where people can get out and plant trees. But if people want to get involved with volunteering within Tree Canada, if someone hears this and they get inspired, who would be the best person to reach out to?
I think the best place to start would be at the website, the Tree
Yeah.
Canada website, and if you start at the website, and there's opportunities then to get more involved. There's opportunities to sort of see what plantings there are. How do you get your business or your organization more involved too? Like, a lot of the work that's being done is really around, it can be around working with different businesses around planting trees, and that's something that is could be larger. I think something else to call to mind is that Tree Canada works with different schools over the course of the year around encouraging, um, helping students, young students, grade school students, to plant trees. And I look at it and I tell people I didn't plant my first tree till I was in my 30s. And I think ideally you would want every school child to be able to plant a tree, or be part of a tree planting in some shape or form, and understand the importance of planting trees and what does that look like, and just that experience that allows our next generation to be more aware of what tree planting is about and the
Hmm.
value that comes from planting trees. So the website's probably the best place to start. Again, it's a small but mighty team of around 50 people right across the country. But that would be the place to start. And then from there, sort of launch out, just
Yeah.
find the thing that makes sense of how best to get involved.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I forget where I was driving to, but it was somewhere in Ontario, and I passed by a forest, and there was a sign up front, and I forget what organization planted it, but it was like planted in 1967 by the Boy Scouts of I forget which region. And I was thinking to myself, you know how cool that would be to drive past
Yeah.
that sign and to see that, because it just goes to show, like, people use this expression a lot, but from a tiny sapling to a large oak, that's in reality what you've done. And to see that over years and years and years, and to a fully mature tree, that's a really cool thing to be a part of. And for a student even to look and say, hey, I was a part of that process and I helped planted those few trees. Or if it's a specific tree in a specific area, it's something that you can look back over your life and say, it might seem small, but it's not. And it's
Yeah.
still here and still standing, which is really
Yeah.
cool. Nice.
It's like I think building in those tree planting experiences with folks when they're very young
Yeah.
will encourage them to be either be planting trees themselves as they reach a certain age, or be planting trees when they become homeowners, or support the planting of trees in specific areas because they see the value. And I think all those things start with the youth. And
Yep.
so it's a wonderful opportunity. We do lots of work with lots of different schools right across the board. And that's something, if you're in the education sector, it's probably something to consider.
Yeah. No, for sure. Education at that stage is so important, and just learning about different aspects of the environment is something that you can take with your entire life, which is a really cool thing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Scott. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I know you mentioned if people want to get into touch, the Tree Canada website's the best resource to start at. So I'll link that out in the bio below if anyone's looking to learn more or get involved. But thanks again. I really appreciate it. And have yourself a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Sean. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks
Take
again.
care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.